Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Flask and actually coding with it. Hopefully you got the chance to install the library last class or during your homework. One thing you can do to double check is write in your terminal flask dash dash version, and the output should say that you're running Flask 1.1.2. Cool. Next thing I'm going to do is just make a directory for my lecture 4 work that I'm going to be doing. So mkdir lecture 4. And then I'm going to cd into lect4 and create a new file called app.py. And then final step is to actually open app.py in my text editor. And if you have your aliases and functions already set up from last time, then you could do that a lot faster. So now let's start writing those 10 lines of code that we were talking about to set up a very basic web server. I'm just going to take this straight from the documentation, and you can too on the Flask website. The first thing you want to do is import the Flask class, which we're going to be using. Next thing is to create this variable called app, which is just going to be an instance of this class. And we're going to put name here, which is just kind of the default when we don't have multiple apps or things running. And then finally, the last thing we need to write is we're going to use this decorator and define the root and have a function for that decorator, which defines when you go to the root, how do you actually handle it. So this is a function called hello world, doesn't matter what it's called, and it's just going to return a very simple string, hello world. I'm going to save this file. So you don't need to worry about like what this Python decorator is. I haven't used Python in a while, so I can't even explain it well. But the main thing to remember is what's happening here is we're able to connect this route or this kind of URL with this function. So your server knows that if the client is trying to hit this endpoint, which is just the most basic slash kind of like your index homepage type thing, then it's going to run the logic that's under there in that function. And then you can have a bunch of different routes, such as this, but have like slash second, and then have another function here and so on. And that's how you slowly can build your app or API how you want it. So for now, we're just going to do this original one. And the way that we actually run this server is you simply do in the terminal Python and then the name of your file, so app.py. You press enter. Oh, actually, forgot one more last piece of code. You need to actually run the app when you have this file. So you're just going to add this one line of code, app.run, at the bottom, and that's going to actually initialize it. So now let's run the file and see what happens. Python app.py. You're going to see a message show up. It's saying serving Flask app, environment production. There's going to be a warning. You don't need to worry about that because we are in development mode. And it's going to say running on this address here with your IP and then the port 5000. So this is kind of, we have everything running now, and how can we actually test it? To do that, the easiest way is to click preview at the top, and then you can say preview running application, and it's going to open up a little browser here. You can also move this browser to its own tab if you want to, but for now I'm just going to leave it here. So there's an error. It's saying, oops, no application seems to be running here. Let's look through and see what the actual error is saying. It's kind of long, so I'm actually going to open up into a new tab. So you can click that arrow there, and then as you can see, we're on our own Chrome tab now. So let's see what this error message is saying. Here's some suggestions on how to fix it. Check that you have access to your environment. You're signed into Cloud9. I am definitely signed into Cloud9. No issues there. Check that your server is successfully running. It is running. It says right here, that it's running. I'm not in the middle of debugging. And then here, this is the key point that we have to take into account actually. The server might be running on a different port. Make sure it runs on port 8080. Right now, we're actually running it on port 5000, as I was saying. You can tell based on the address that's written here. So we're not routing this through the right port, and we're going to have to customize that so we can do that. So to fix this, you simply need to manually add some code to app.run so you can choose which port you want to be listening on. So to do that, you just need to add this line, port equals, and then int os.getEnv port 8080. Here we're actually setting it. And again, you don't need to worry about like what this code actually is. Just know that it's doing good things for us. And IDE is showing an error here. You can hover over it and see undefined variable OS. So where's OS? Let's import that. Okay, it's imported. Error should go away. Cool. Now let's try running this server again. So for that, if you remember, you do Python and then just the file name. So you're just running a file like normal. Now it's running. Let's preview it and see if things change. And they do. So as you can see now, you see hello world on the browser. And you also see on your terminal screen, it's going to say there was a GET request to this endpoint, the basic slash, at this time on this IP address, and it gave a status of 200, which basically just means success. Cool. And one other thing you can actually do, right now we're running it on the local host, but if you wanted, you could set the host to something else. You could do os.getEnv and set the IP to something. So here I was just seeing from the example, you can do 0.0.0.0, which is like setting it to be an externally visible server. And whenever you make a change to the file, you would have to quit out of the server with Control-C and then rerun it. But we shouldn't actually see any changes here. Everything should work as normal. Now, what else can we do? I think one good thing to remember is just you're going to be running into issues and you're going to want to debug. One useful way of doing that, very simple way, is just to print. So you can print in your function to see, have I actually hit this endpoint? Is something getting stuck in the middle of it, or did I not even reach the endpoint? So I could say reached/endpoint and print that out. And then if we want to test it, again, we'd have to close the server. But one other thing we can do, if we don't want to have to keep closing and restarting the server whenever we make changes, is add debug equals true in your app.run call. And this is going to be really nice. It's just going to allow you to not have to restart anything. Whenever it senses that there's been a code change, it's going to restart the server for you. So you don't have to worry about it, and you don't have to keep running these extra commands. So now I'm going to run this, and let's preview the application one more time and see if our print statement works. So here now you can see reach/endpoint in the terminal. That's awesome. And then what if I want to see an updated print line? So when I click save with this updated file, it shows restarting, and I didn't need to run anything on my own. I just click preview, and here we go, updated print line. Cool. And that's everything with a basic Flask server. With just these few lines of code, you have your most basic app running. So congratulations.